Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. Silence is a powerful thing. When two people go quiet, when there's no texting, no calling, no checking in, that's when reality shows up. Because silence has a way of pulling the truth out of hiding. It's in that quiet space where you find out who's really connected to you and who was only attached to the attention. See, anybody can talk big when things are loud and full of energy, but when the noise stops, that's when the truth whispers loudest. Silence reveals the truth of connection in ways words never can. When two people stop communicating, the world around them may assume something is wrong. What's really happening is deeper than that. Silence strips away the noise, the distractions, and the masks that people wear. It takes away the comfort of constant validation and forces both individuals to sit alone with their thoughts. That quiet distance becomes a mirror, showing what was real and what was only an illusion. When there are no more texts to fill the emptiness, no calls to distract from the doubt, you begin to see the true weight of the bond you shared. The truth of connection doesn't show up in how often someone talks to you. It shows up in how much they feel your absence. When silence enters, the mind starts to wander, replaying every conversation, every memory, every emotion that was once shared. And in that space, real feelings rise to the surface. Because when words stop, feelings finally get the room to breathe. Sometimes that silence reveals love that was hidden beneath pride. Other times, it reveals indifference that was dressed up as affection. People talk all the time about love being shown through action. They forget that silence is an action too. Choosing not to speak says something. Choosing not to chase, not to explain, not to argue, that's communication in its purest form. It tells you that one person is at peace, or perhaps that they're protecting their peace. It tells you who values connection enough to bridge the silence and who's content to let it stay quiet. Silence also tests emotional maturity. The ones who can sit with it without trying to fill it are often the ones who understand that connection isn't about constant noise, it's about genuine energy. When you truly connect with someone, the bond doesn't break because of silence. It deepens. The absence becomes a test of patience, trust, and emotional stability. You start to notice that silence doesn't mean detachment. It means space for growth. Because sometimes the best thing you can do for a connection is step back and let it breathe. Let both hearts process what they've felt, what they've given, and what they truly want moving forward. The truth of connection is most visible when silence stretches on. That's when you see who can't go a day without reaching out and who can go weeks without a thought. The real ones will always circle back because silence makes them realize the bond wasn't just words, it was understanding. The others, the temporary ones, fade quietly, proving they were never really connected to your soul, just to the convenience of your presence. In the end, silence doesn't destroy what's real, it only exposes it. When the noise fades and the world goes quiet, only the genuine connections remain. You'll know who was meant for you, not by how loudly they spoke, by how deeply they still feel you in your absence. Time apart tests what was real and what was temporary. When two people take a step back from each other, the silence between them becomes a powerful judge of truth. In that space of distance, there's no more pretending, no more forcing conversations, no more showing up out of habit. The emotions that were once loud and messy start to settle, and what remains is what was genuine all along. Time has a way of stripping things down to their core. When you're constantly in someone's presence, emotions can blur your vision, but when they're gone, you see clearly. You realize who mattered from the heart and who mattered only because they were around. The ones who are meant to stay in your life will find a way back even after the silence, but the ones who were temporary will fade without explanation. Time apart also brings clarity. When emotions run high, people often say things they don't mean or make choices out of pride and pain. Distance allows you to breathe and reflect. It gives your heart and mind the chance to catch up with each other. In those quiet days, you begin to see the difference between needing someone and valuing them. Need comes from emptiness, but value comes from appreciation. When you've truly valued someone, time apart doesn't erase that connection. It may hurt, it may ache, but it doesn't vanish. Instead, it grows stronger because you finally understand their worth beyond the moments of togetherness. On the other hand, time apart also exposes what was only built on convenience. Some relationships are comfortable simply because they fill a routine, not because they carry depth. When those routines break and you stop hearing from someone, you realize there was never much substance beneath the surface. If the bond was built only on the need for attention, time apart will make it crumble. But if it was built on respect and emotional truth, distance will only make it stronger. The people who are meant to stay connected to your life will not let silence erase what was real. They may not reach out immediately, but they will always find a way to reconnect because real connections don't vanish with time. Time apart doesn't just test love. It tests patience, ego, and character. It reveals who is willing to grow, who is ready to communicate with maturity, and who only wanted things easy. You start to see who chooses peace over pride and who is humble enough to rebuild what's worth saving. The moments of separation create a silent classroom where both hearts learn. They learn to appreciate, to forgive, to let go, or to return stronger. Every pause, every distance, every silence teaches something. And if the connection was real, time apart won't destroy it. It will refine it. Because what's meant for you doesn't get lost in silence. It waits for the right time to reappear stronger, wiser, and truer than before. The one who values peace over pride grows stronger because pride feeds conflict, while peace feeds growth. In every relationship, there comes a moment when silence replaces arguments, when walking away speaks louder than any explanation could. That moment defines strength. It's easy to fight, to defend your point, to prove you're right, but it takes a deeper kind of courage to let things be, to step back without bitterness. When someone chooses peace over pride, they're not giving up, they're growing up. They've learned that not every battle deserves their energy, and not every disagreement needs to be won. The person who values peace understands that silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's knowing that sometimes the best response is no reaction at all. Pride keeps people stuck. It whispers, don't text first, don't apologize, make them miss you. But peace says, protect your heart, not your ego. Pride demands attention, but peace demands healing. When two people go silent, pride often wants to break that silence with anger or blame. But peace teaches you to wait, to breathe, and to let the dust settle. Because peace doesn't come from control, it comes from acceptance. You can't control how someone feels, how they react, or whether they return. You can control your response, your calm, and your boundaries. That's where true power lies, in the ability to stay centered when everything around you feels uncertain. When someone values peace, they stop chasing chaos. They stop replaying conversations in their head, wondering what they should have said differently. They realize that closure doesn't always come from others. Sometimes it comes from the decision to move forward quietly. That's the kind of strength that no one can take away. The world often mistakes silence for indifference, but it's not indifference. It's emotional intelligence. It's the realization that you can love someone and still choose to protect your sanity. Because peace doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to not let the situation destroy your inner balance. Peace over pride also changes the energy between people. When you refuse to feed into negativity, the other person eventually feels the shift. They notice the calm, the absence of reaction, the quiet power in your restraint. That's when they start to question their own behavior. Silence becomes your message and peace becomes your strength. The louder pride screams, the stronger peace stands. And while pride burns bridges, peace builds wisdom. The one who values peace begins to attract better energy, better conversations, better people, because they've learned how to walk away from what disturbs their spirit. In the end, the person who chooses peace over pride doesn't lose anything. They gain everything. They gain control over their emotions, over their focus, and over their life. They understand that silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. And while pride might make you feel powerful for a moment, peace keeps you powerful for a lifetime. Distance exposes feelings that words once covered. When two people stop communicating, the quiet between them starts revealing everything that was once hidden behind conversations, laughter, or arguments. Words have a way of disguising emotions. People say they're fine when they're hurting. They pretend they've moved on when they're still holding on. They act distant when they actually care deeply. But when there are no more words, when distance steps in, there's nowhere left for feelings to hide. That's when the truth begins to surface. The heart speaks louder in silence than the mouth ever could. In distance, the real emotions rise up. If love was genuine, the silence will make it ache even stronger. If it was shallow, that silence will make it fade without resistance. The time apart forces both sides to feel what they've been ignoring. One might realize how much peace the other brought into their life, how many small moments they took for granted, how deeply they were understood without explanation. The other might recognize that what they thought was love was just comfort, that the attachment was built on habit and not on heart. Distance clears the fog that constant communication can create. It gives both people a chance to see what their connection truly meant without the distraction of daily contact. There's a certain honesty that distance brings. When someone truly cares, they don't just disappear emotionally, even in silence. They'll think about you, wonder how you are, and hope you're doing well. They may not reach out, but the energy remains. Their heart still holds space for you, quietly. But when someone's feelings were only surface level, distance will make that emptiness obvious. They'll move on easily because there was never anything deep enough to miss. That's the beauty and the pain of silence. It doesn't lie. It doesn't exaggerate. It simply exposes. Distance also helps heal emotional confusion. When people are too close for too long, they can get caught in patterns, arguments that never end, conversations that go in circles, emotions that blur together. But when you step away, you start to see things more clearly. You realize who brings calmness to your soul and who drains it. You start to understand whether the relationship was growing you or breaking you. And that clarity only comes when you stop talking long enough to listen to your inner voice. The most powerful truths about love and connection often reveal themselves when nothing is said. Sometimes distance shows that someone truly was your peace, and the silence without them feels heavy. Other times, it shows that the peace you thought came from them was actually the peace you had within yourself all along. Either way, distance unmasks the truth. It removes the illusion and leaves behind only what's real. The emotions that survive the silence are the ones that never needed words to exist. And the ones that fade were never strong enough to last beyond the sound of conversation. Growth happens in quiet, not in noise. When life slows down, when the phone stops buzzing, and when conversations fade into silence, that's when true transformation begins. The world teaches people to stay busy, always talk, to constantly explain, but real strength and maturity are born in stillness. It's in those quiet moments when there's no one to impress, no one to prove wrong, and no one to listen, that you finally meet yourself. You begin to understand your emotions, your triggers, your dreams, and your limits. Growth doesn't shout, it whispers through reflection, patience, and solitude. The person who can sit alone without seeking distraction is the person who is truly evolving. Noise keeps you comfortable. It gives you a way to escape your thoughts, to hide from your truth. But silence confronts you with everything you've been avoiding. It asks you hard questions. It makes you think about why you tolerate what you do, why you chase certain people, and why you hold on to pain that doesn't serve you anymore. In that quiet space, you start to see yourself clearly. You realize how much energy you've spent trying to please others, how much of yourself you've given away for validation, and how much peace you lost in the process. Growth happens when you stop running from that realization and start accepting it. That's when change begins, not because someone told you to, but because your heart demanded it. Silence teaches you self-control. It shows you that not every thought deserves to be spoken, not every emotion deserves a reaction, and not every person deserves your explanation. You begin to understand the power of restraint, the ability to let things unfold naturally without forcing outcomes. When you stop reacting out of emotion and start responding with wisdom, you become stronger. Growth means knowing when to stay silent, not out of fear, out of self-respect. It's realizing that peace is more valuable than proving a point. In quiet moments, you also learn to listen better, not just to others, but to yourself. You start recognizing what your soul truly needs instead of what your ego wants. You stop chasing temporary distractions and begin focusing on long-term peace. You start to heal from the inside out, letting go of pain that once defined you. The silence that once felt lonely turns into a sanctuary where you recharge and rebuild. That's where growth lives. In those unseen moments when no one's watching but you're becoming someone new. Growth in silence is not glamorous. It's uncomfortable, it's raw, and it's honest. But it's also necessary. Because when you finally rise from that quiet season, you come out stronger, wiser, and softer all at once. You don't need to announce your change. People will see it in your calmness, your confidence, and your peace. The quiet doesn't just change your surroundings, it changes your spirit. And once you've grown in silence, no noise in the world can shake what you've built within. Silence either breaks the bond or builds it stronger. When two people stop communicating, that silence becomes the ultimate test of connection. It exposes what kind of foundation the relationship was built on. If it was shallow, full of ego, dependent on constant attention, silence will tear it apart piece by piece. But if it was rooted in genuine understanding, respect, and emotional depth, that silence will only make it stronger. Distance and quietness reveal what talking often hides. When there's no conversation to hold things together, the bond either fades because it was never real, or it deepens because it was always true. Silence can feel heavy. It can feel like loss, confusion, or rejection. But that quiet space also holds truth. When two people stop talking, the emotions that used to hide behind words finally come to the surface. You start to see who really misses you, who truly values you, and who was only there because communication was convenient. The silence becomes a stage where loyalty and patience play their parts. Some people will use the silence to move on quickly, to fill the void with something else. Others will use it to reflect, to understand, to grow, and to return with a clearer heart. The bond that survives that silence doesn't just survive, it transforms. When silence breaks a bond, it's often because that bond was already weak. People think that constant communication equals connection, but it doesn't. Words can cover up emptiness, and conversation can distract from emotional distance. Silence takes all of that away.